Hey, hey. Hi, sweet friends. We are excited that you're joining us today. This is episode number 125, and we are continuing our talk about obedience.
Yes.
And actually, today going to discuss what lies on the other side of obedience. So, welcome. My name is Pam Pegram.
Hi, I'm Gwen Neal.
And I'm Kim Ball.
Yay.
Yay! Oh my gosh, I love this. What lies on the other side of
yes.
obedience? It's like, what lies on the other side of the wrapping of that Snickers bar? Goodness. Oh my word. You know what? When my son was like 5 years old, he wasn't in kindergarten yet, or maybe he was, but anyway, he was a holy terror at times. And the teacher called me and said, "Did you get the note I sent home with Jeremy?" And I was like, "No, ma'am. What note?" She said, "Well, I put it in his backpack inside his folder." So I said, "Jeremy?" And the teacher sent home a note. And at that time, he stuttered, Yes, ma'am." I was like, "Where is it?" "I don't know." So I went to the house of the lady who picked him up. She's a retired teacher, and she would get Kim and Jeremy after school for me. And so he had taken it and balled it up and put it under her seat. So I get it. I go back home, and I was like, "Jeremy, why did you do this?" I wanted to read it." "Boy, you can't read." And I spanked him. But you know what? After the spanking, there was peace. The rod of correction driveth foolishness out of the child. That's in Proverbs somewhere. I'm paraphrasing. But a good spanking does bring peace in the home. When the kids are acting up, being disobedient, disrespectful, mouthing off, a good swat on the behind is not going to kill them. And I would rather do it than the police.
Yeah.
And so that's what's on the other side of obedience for us.
Ooh.
Peace.
Yes.
I can remember times. Matter of fact, we had a sleepover with some of my granddaughters, and they always like, "Tell me stories. Tell us stories about Aunt Jessica. Tell us stories about Mama. Tell us stories about Daddy." The whole bit. And so we were telling a story this weekend, and they thought it was so funny where one of my children had gotten a spanking, but it was a situation where I'm like, "Please don't make me spank you." It was just disobedience after disobedience after disobedience until you just have to address it. I mean, you just have no choice but to address
Right.
it. And I think that happens sometimes with us. We're just disobedient to the Lord and disobedient and so it just has to be addressed.
Yeah.
It has to be dealt with. And if we can equate that with us being parents, it's because He loves us. I mean, if I didn't love my children, I would never discipline them a single time because that is not fun.
Right.
And especially
It
the
would have been
years.
easier that way.
Yeah, especially the
Discipline's not
years that
easy.
I was a single mom. Because then I'm by myself. I'm the bad man out. Everybody's
Yeah.
upset with me because they got in trouble. And it would have been easier just to let it go, let it slide. But that's not what was best for my children.
Right.
They needed to know right from wrong. They needed to know that behavior was not okay.
That's right.
And it was the best thing for them to help them to become who they were supposed to become.
Yeah.
And it's the same with us.
Yeah.
So God has to get our attention
Yeah.
at times, and He has to remind us of our disobedience.
That's right. Ooh, y'all. Okay. Adam and Abraham. What's on the other side of disobedience?
Yes.
Lord have mercy. Adam had it made,
Yes.
and he was disobedient.
Right.
And he got kicked out
Right.
because he listened to his wife. Then we have Abraham, who did the same thing. He listened to Sarah and slept with Sarah's maiden, Hagar.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about this. God spoke directly to the men, directly to the husbands, and told them what to do, how it was going to happen, or what not to do.
Wow.
We can get in the way, girls, by whispering in our husband's ear, telling him something that is contrary to what God says. Now, Adam was still blessed. He lived a long life. He had children, he's still the first.
Right.
And so was Abraham. God still blessed him with the
Oh,
son
yes.
of promise. And he was very wealthy and lived a long life and all of that. But think of where we could be right now if they were just on the right side of obedience.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, for me, I think that obedience brings a lot of things. I just jotted a few things down, just thinking about obedience brings freedom. In the previous podcast, we're talking about Jehoshaphat and how they were obedient to not bring, to let God fight the battle. And if you
yes.
haven't listened to the previous podcast, go back and do that, because for me, it was a powerful podcast just to listen about in 2 Chronicles about that. But that obedience brought freedom
Yes.
for them.
Yes.
Obedience brings freedom. You're no longer in bondage to the striving.
Right.
Because you're being obedient to him. He's providing the way out.
Yes.
He's shoveling the snow out of the way so you can walk. Shoveling, we talked about this a couple of podcasts ago, but you dip your foot in the water and
That's
he parted the
right.
Red
Yeah.
Sea. It brings freedom. And so many of us, including myself at times, are living in that jail cell with the door unlocked.
Yes.
And we think it's locked because we're not walking in obedience. We're walking in our own self and our own self-striving. But walking in obedience
us free.
opens the door.
Yes.
That's right.
And it
Yes.
wasn't locked anyway.
Yeah.
And it gives us power, his power, not our own power, but his power that he's told us that we have the authority
Yeah.
because our names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, like that we are in the Book of Life. We have been saved, that we have that authority, and that's what obedience gives us.
Yes.
And so, who doesn't want
Oh,
that?
that's good.
Who does not
I
want
want
that?
it.
I want it
I
too.
want it.
I want it too.
Yes.
So on the other side of what God's asking you to do, if he's asking you to step out and teach that Bible study, or if he's asking you just to go simply next door and give that neighbor the Bible. You don't know if they believe or not, but bring them, a Bible verse or something with a Bible verse attached, just a simple something.
Yes.
Let God work in you, in and through you, and with his power. Oh my goodness, on the other side of obedience brings
Yes.
blessing. Maybe that neighbor will become your best friend, and you never knew a friend like that. You don't know what is going to be on the other side of obedience, but definitely freedom, and definitely we gain his power.
That's
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. I love that.
I taught a women's Bible class back in the fall, and part of it, the message was being a kept woman. And I want that. I am kept by God.
Oh,
And when you're a kept woman, now there's one definition that the world looks at, but this one is far greater. The responsibility to take care of myself is no longer mine.
yeah.
I'm his daughter. And this is what Kim shared, the sacrifice that Jesus made, talking in our last podcast, the other obedience with Jesus going to the cross made this possible, that I can be a kept girl.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. There's
And
no other way.
No other way. I don't want to be free.
No.
Right.
Not that kind of free. I want to belong to him, where when someone comes for me, the enemy, and he's going to step in front and say, she's mine, back off.
Wow. I love it.
Yes. And that's what he wants for us. That's what's on the other side of obedience for me, is being kept by him. He looks at me and he sees Jesus, So.
Yeah.
And so as we talk about what's on the other side of obedience, we'll talk about the blessings and the gifts and like the freedom, all those things that we get to partake of. And we'll talk about that as we go on today. But before we do, let's just stop and recognize that it's not always all about me. And me being obedient has ramifications beyond myself.
Yes.
And so who is on the other side of that obedience? So if I'm obedient to Christ, and if I take my children to church, how does that impact their life?
Oh, yeah.
Not just my life, but my children's life. If I do things I'm afraid to do, if I pray out loud with a stranger in a restaurant because I feel led to, not only am I being obedient, but how does that impact that stranger's life? And what seed might be planted and what might sprout forth out of that? I have no idea. But what would happen if I had not have done that? If I had chosen to not be obedient to that prompting?
That's right.
I mean, in so many things. If you feel called to start a ministry or called to start a business, or if you feel called to change jobs, or if you feel like God is asking you to sell your house or to move, or whatever God is asking you to do, like who are the people on the other side of that next step that God's asking you to take, and what will it cost them if you don't walk in obedience to the Lord?
Yeah.
When you said that, I remember when you felt led to put your house up for sale. And that not only impacted you,
Yes.
but your children.
Yes.
So suppose you didn't follow through, you hadn't gone through. Would it be the same now?
Then I would not be where I am now. And I love where I live now. It just feels like heaven on earth for me. I went through a long journey, and so it was hard.
Yeah.
In between then and now, the road got a little bit of a bump in it, and it was a struggle. But now I live next door to two of my children. I wish I lived next door to all three of them, but one, her husband's a pastor, and God has them serving somewhere else. But what a blessing to get to live next to 6 of my grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah.
How
You're in your
amazing.
promised land.
I am.
That's what we call
It is definitely my promised land.
They have a
Yes.
compound.
Yes, we do.
And that was
Yes.
the other side of your obedience.
Yes.
And just
Yes.
sticking with it, even when it got hard.
Yes.
Yeah, you were faithful.
That's right. And so just like in the same kind of vein that you were talking about, like the obedience of taking your kids or your grandkids to church, what effect that has. But when you're obedience, it also inspires others to be obedient in that
Yes.
same vein. So like when
Yes.
people see that you have taken that step of obedience, it inspires others to take that step.
Oh,
that
I
God's
need to go to
calling
church
you-
too. Or,
Right.
oh, I could take my grandkids too.
Right.
Yeah.
Or,
it's an
or they
encouragement.
see people starting
Yeah.
to step up as a servant leader in a ministry where, okay, well, if she's doing that, she's being obedient, and I know God's been calling me to do something, I think I'll step up and serve in that way. And it inspires others to do the same.
Yes.
And so I think that in that same vein, I think it's just also lends to inspiration. On the other side of obedience,
Yeah.
people see, she did that. And God's been calling me to do something, and I'll try that out. And I'll do
Yes.
that. I'll join the kitchen ministry and make food for funerals, or, whatever that it is that
Yeah.
he's calling you
Yes.
to do.
Yeah. And so Kim, you're on the other side, 10 years on the other side of obedience.
Yes.
You resisted for 30 days
I did.
the call to
I did.
start women's ministry here. You're a leader, and you've been doing a phenomenal job. What's the other side?
Oh,
What is
my
it looking
goodness.
like now?
It is blessings beyond blessings. Things that I never would have ever seen, I think, if I hadn't responded. Seeing God work in miraculous ways, seeing people saved and giving their life to Jesus, and on the other side of their obedience, then spurring my faith on because of that. Getting to start a ministry like Engaged for More and our Gather ministry that we have within our community. These things have been blessings upon blessings. And they are greater than any material blessing could be.
Yes.
And anytime that I feel like, God, are you working? Are you working through me? I just turn to my sisters and I think, yes. I mean, y'all iron sharpens iron. I can get that out. But it's so true. These blessings of friendships that are not necessarily in my church, but that have been, and some of them halfway in my church, just down the road in another part of our church, but have been blessings on the other side. So obedience does bring blessing.
Yes.
Right.
I can testify to that. Obedience does bring blessing, but it does bring, I feel like I don't know. I hesitate. The Bible says success, not in the world's economy,
Right.
but in biblical and God's economy.
Yes.
It is just like the living out of Joshua 1:8. It says, keep this book of law always on your lips, meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And so I don't know what God's measure, even through reading this, exactly what God's measure of success is, except for being obedient.
Yes. And
That's
glorifying
right.
Him.
And glorifying Him.
That's right.
Exactly. Obedience for the purpose of glorifying Him. That's right. And so, yeah.
Not glorifying me,
No, absolutely.
but glorifying Him.
In fact,
Yes.
every day, lay me down flat and let me walk forward in your obedience.
That's
Yes.
the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about some other things like you've just mentioned success by God's terms on the other
Right.
side of obedience. You've mentioned protection and power over the enemy. I mean, I know when in the Israelites and when God was leading them, and they 40 days and the whole bit, and they were seeking their promised land. What they got to see on the other side of obedience just included so many things, like the blessing of their children.
Yeah.
Their children were blessed. Man, that's huge. Isn't that huge? I mean, that's a really big deal for us to know that our children will be blessed. There was a bountiful harvest of food. You talked about that too. We've seen that before.
Yeah.
They were set apart.
Right.
They were set apart as God's holy people. So on the other side of obedience, that includes you being set apart.
Right. That's right.
And that's so important.
So
we're
amazing.
not called to blend in. We're not called to be like the world and to fit in
That's
and to
right.
go along with the crowd.
Yeah.
We're called to be set apart.
Right. There's and it's funny, and we always say we never plan together. We just God leads us, and we are on the same path when we come together for our podcast. So some of those same words: prominence, success, blessings, protection, bountiful. We're set apart, we're prosperous, holy, we're respected by others. And all of these are backed up from the promises in His Word in Psalm 16, Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 14, where we talked about that in a couple of podcasts previous about the blessings of life. You have a choice: life through obedience or death through disobedience are set before you.
Yeah.
I love that unexpected favor. And then even power and authority. And Pam mentioned when the Israelites, when they were traversing through the wilderness, their shoes did not give out.
Yeah.
Their clothes did not give out.
Wow.
That's unexpected favor.
Yes.
When we are obedient to God or just under His covering. And then the Lord says, even to Abraham, this is what the Lord says: because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your son, your only son.
Yes.
I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless
Wow.
you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies. That was on the
That's
other
amazing.
side
Yeah.
of Abraham's blessings, taken from Genesis 22, starting with verse 1.
Yeah.
He was just a man.
That's right.
We all have boys. Pam, Kim, Gwen, take your son. And for all three of us, it would be your only son.
Yeah.
Do we
That's
have
true.
enough faith to do that? We started this series in
With
February
faith.
talking about faith.
That's right.
And here we are with trust and obedience and what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unmeasurable.
Yeah. And I think overall, when I look back on what obedience has brought me more than anything, that's even better than the blessings that I've received and even the hard times that I've received too, is just the closer walk with him.
Intimacy,
The
yes.
intimacy,
Yes.
the trust that he has built in me, whether I liked it or not, I learned about it. The trust and obedience and the surrender to my desires, my wants, how I thought it should look, all of that has gone way by the wayside. And it's just, Lord, can I just see your face today?
Yes.
Every day it's my desire to meet him fully through the pages of his word.
Yes.
And so what your obedience may just be today is just God saying, will you just sit with me? Will you sit with me? Boy,
Yeah.
is that not just his desire is our love relationship with him. And if you haven't sat with Jesus today, if you haven't just spent time in his word to know and to hear, we talked about that last podcast, is in the phrase of obedience, is to hear how much he loves you. Though, and if you want to know your why on why he's asking you to obey him, is because he wants to strengthen your faith. He wants to deepen your faith. He wants to get you to a point that he is enough for you, not everything that the world offers and all the things that the world offers. And so what lies on the other side of obedience is what you could, above all, what we could ask or imagine.
Yeah.
And that's just it.
Exceedingly abundantly more.
But it starts
love
with
it.
sitting down with Jesus. It starts, y'all, with sitting down with him.
Yes.
And maybe that's not even on your radar or your to-do list or your, we have as women a crazy litany of things that we have to do. But if it doesn't start with Jesus every day or sometime during the day, we don't have to get into like it has to happen from the beginning. But if we don't take that time during the day to be with him, you don't know what you're missing.
Right, that's right. I love that. One more thing that I want to just share with you that's on the other side of obedience is leadership.
Yes.
Leadership is on the other side
That's right.
of obedience.
right.
And in Deuteronomy 28:13, he says, "And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. And you shall only go up and not down. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you today, being careful to do them."
I love that.
Careful to do them. And not leadership so that you're glorified, but leadership so that he's glorified. Leadership in the way that you are leading and pointing other people to Jesus. Leadership that matters.
Right.
That really impacts lives and makes a difference. And that requires obedience.
It does.
It requires surrender.
And Pam has such a heart for that. She's leading a women's Bible class out of her home. That's obedience. She is mentoring and encouraging women every day. That's obedience. She's constantly looking for ways to feed his sheep
Yes.
in a manner that brings him glory. That's obedience. And that's not easy when you are the grandmother of 10 children.
But in that is such blessing. I tell you, it's my favorite thing to do. It really is. And because I spend time doing that with women, it also inspires me to spend time doing that with my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And that really matters deeply. That I'm not just to keep them for fun. They are fun, so much fun. Not just to keep them for fun, but to really pour Jesus into them. And so as much fun as we have, I also say, let's go do Bible study. And we go and we spend that time together. And it's hilarious, some of the things that they say but they're learning.
Yeah.
They're learning. And I just want them to know that that's the most important thing in their life is their relationship with Jesus. And honestly, we just want you to know that the most important thing in your life is Jesus. It matters more than anything else. And if you will seek him with all your heart, you will find him, and you can have a deeply rooted, fully committed, intimate relationship with him that will let you know that he is everything you have ever wanted. He is every single thing that you need, and you will be so richly blessed just in that. If you have a relationship with Jesus, girl, you are rich beyond your wildest dreams.
Absolutely.
For sure. So
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us today. We really hope this blessed you. Hop over to our website, engageformore.com. There's lots of resources there, and we would love to just bless you and encourage you in any way that we can. Join us next time.